So the anxiety alone is not enough for an animal to enter the new dimension of the existence. What is still needed is a brain that is advanced in terms of evolution, a brain which will use such a mutation to jump into the new dimension of existence, the symbolic dimension. But is only a highly advanced brain enough, apart from the anxiety, for an animal to become a human? After all, the brains of other monkeys, chimpanzees, and orangutans are almost the same in terms of the advancement of the evolutionary development as the human brain. And probably among these monkeys related to the man, there are individuals with the mutated fear gene, that's the anxiety individuals. They should fulfill the conditions, that is, the anxiety plus an advanced brain, to enter the dimension of the symbolic reality too. But they don't. Don't they? Do they? There are monkeys that mastered the ability to recognize signs. Anyone who has any animals at home, especially mammals, has already realized that animals living with humans seem to understand certain words. Does this mean that the symbolic reality is not alien to them? Or is it an overinterpretation? The transition from the object dimension to the symbolic dimension is the greatest achievement in the evolution of the nervous system of animals. However, the mutated fear gene is not enough for it. Even an evolutionarily advanced brain is not. Something more is needed. What can it be if the apes, which are evolutionarily close to the man, do not have it? And the man does? Why, in so many millions of years, only one species of the great apes has generated the ability to intentionally emit brain waves, and others are unable to exceed this threshold? After all, it's more than certain that over the course of these millions of years, many apes among the apes, as well as among other animals, non-apes, were born with a mutation in the fear gene and exhibited the first continuous spontaneous brain wave emission. That's the anxiety emission. Why are we, the human apes, the only ones of all the monkeys able to develop the primary continuous spontaneous emission of the brain into a precise brain emissions, so that the resulting emissions of electromagnetic waves carry all possible symbolic meanings, enabling the unique in the cosmic scale, the phenomenon of thinking? That's the existence in the dimension of the symbolic reality. The reality having nothing to do with the object reality of the entire universe. What is that? What was and is unattainable? What is it that was and is unattainable, inaccessible to the other monkeys, and what only the man does have? The answer to this question is also the answer to the question of what causes the human brain of almost every human being, except in cases of severe handicaps and complete autism, to discover the possibility of a deliberate emission of the electromagnetic waves, and why the brain of other animals cannot do so. But can it really not? All animals, however, communicate by means of certain deliberate sounds. So, since they emit intentional sounds in addition to spontaneous ones, they must be able to emit with their brain the intentional electromagnetic waves. Animals should also possess this brain skill. So the obstacle is not even at the level of the brain ability to emit the intentional electromagnetic waves. Moreover, the deliberate emission of the electromagnetic waves by the brain is not yet a guarantee of entering to the symbolic dimension. The animals do make sounds in order to communicate with each other and with the environment. It's not, however, a symbolic message, but the most object oriented one. The sounds made by the animals are deliberate expressions, but they are simply physiological sounds stored in the genes, probably. Meanwhile, in addition to such sounds, the man emits also completely symbolic sounds, non object oriented sounds. More, it mainly emits such sounds. Of course, the emission of these sounds must be preceded by the electromagnetic brain emission. This, in turn, is perceived by the brain's speech neurons. Here, the code contained in the brain wave emission is read, and then the appropriate neurons of the thought to speech field in the brain send an impulse to the nerve cells innervating the muscle of the larynx, the mouth, and the tongue, which, having previously learned to change their shape so that the adequate words could sound in the human mouth, say them. So the symbolic dimension results neither from the anxiety nor from the deliberate electromagnetic wave emissions of the brain. Animals can do that too, other animals. This dimension was born only after the man has mastered the symbolic code. Theoretically, animals could also master such a code with their brains without more difficulty than people in the early stages of development. In other words, the anthropoid apes worked out an access to the symbolic dimension through speech, and the word worked out is absolutely appropriate here, as 20 million years ago, the access to the gift of speech also today requires incredible work since birth to the late childhood or even longer. The speech created the symbolic dimension. The speech allowed the man to enter the symbolic dimension. Animals have not developed this skill and therefore remain outside of the symbolic world. So another question arises. Why does the man speak the speech and the other animals do not? The anatomy of both the brain and the vocal apparatus of animals is not an obstacle. So where is it? The answer is surprisingly simple. Other animals in the course of their evolution did not develop such an extensive system of communication like the human beings did, a system that we call the speech, because such a skill, especially a highly developed one, was not necessary for their survival. The animals developed other skills. So, if we think carefully, we can easily come to the conclusion that the speech was also not necessary for the survival of either human primates of the man or the man himself. From the very beginning, for the apes, we come from, it was only a kind of a play. From the very beginning, for the apes that we come from, it was only a kind of a play, a game that they enjoyed, unlike other species of the monkeys. The human speech appeared somehow on the sidelines of evolution and plays no role in it from the point of view of the nature. You might say that other animals were too serious to play in something as frivolous as the speech. The apes we come from became the ancestors of the man due to the bigger than in other animals tendency and willingness to play.